back to the Two Pointers Podcast. I'm Trevor Everett. Before we get to today's guest, we've got a couple of great things happening the last couple of weeks. Draft Chat just released on Friday with Phil Dexter talking about North Carolina prospects, so Wake Forest, Duke, NC State, North Carolina. I'm bringing that up for a reason because it's going to fit right into the first half of the guest today with our conversation. Talking to me today from co-host of the Pick a Side podcast, as well as now branching out into what he is calling Riv Academy. I like it so far. It's really neat getting to kind of realize how to talk to a camera by yourself. It's really, really weird. I'm with you. That's why I like having people like you on as guests. So without further ado, Riv Brown from all of those lovely places. How are you, my friend?
I'm feeling good, man. You mentioned it. Talking to a camera by yourself has got to be top 5 weirdest things I've ever done. It's so it makes me nervous. I just be sitting there. I do 15, 20 takes. I'm like, nah, this is weird, man. I got to turn this off. I can't do it. But, I'm happy to be here. I see you got your NC State hat on. Yeah, I know you're a big NC State fan, so I'm definitely excited to do this, man.
I try not to let it murk up anything, even though I get to see them more than anybody. I'm literally going to watch Florida State on Wednesday to see some
you
Baba Miller.
are?
Yeah, to see some Baba Miller scouting kind of thing. I don't want to let it murk it up. I still will be as honest as I can with the ACC because it is where I grew up. It is in my backyard, as you want to call it, Tobacco Road, whatever you want to call that. Getting to see these 4 teams as a kid, I kind of fell in love with that first. Like, oh, wow, this is amazing. Coach K, Dean Smith, Roy Williams. Yeah. So you brought up the ACC thing to me because I want to know, first of all, in New York, obviously there's a big chance it might be Syracuse. That's my guess. But my listeners might not know who you are, how what you talk about, why you care about college basketball more than obviously you guys on the show cover NFL and NBA the most. So talk about the ACC connection for you.
Oh, man. So I live in Jersey, and we have, Seton Hall, we have Rutgers, but I became a Syracuse fan probably around the MCW time. I think the MCW is when I really started to focus in on college, and I started to watch, and I was like, I want to know the guys that are coming in prior to the NBA. I want to know what we're scouting. Who are these players that we draft? I used to play 2K a lot. Who is these guys that I'm picking in the draft? So I started to watch college a lot more. Syracuse, I just fell in love with it because it's, just MCW, his game was so fun. And then when Tyler Ennis came in, CJ Fair, that's when I really was like, no, these are definitely my boys. We haven't had the best of luck. We're not the best team, but we always hit a run every 2-3 years where we go deep, and it's like Syracuse wasn't supposed to get there. But lately now, living in New Jersey, I've been to a couple of Seton Hall games, Rutgers games. This year and last year was probably the most that I've been to college basketball games, and the atmosphere is so much better than the NBA game, especially a rivalry game. Those games. I was at the Rutgers St. John's game, and the atmosphere there was just so insane, and it's just so loud. The rivalry is real, and games like that, you miss rivalries in the NBA. You miss those because those bring a different type of energy. Even an NFL game when the Dolphins come to town against the Jets or the Eagles come play the Giants, it's just that different type of energy, different type of atmosphere. The fans are a little bit extra pumped. No matter the record, they come in there, they want to beat their rivals. But definitely Syracuse is my home. We haven't been good lately. I've been saying Boeheim is cooked for 2-3 years. The recruiting process has stunk. But Syracuse, I'm gonna bleed orange all the way.
I love it. There are a lot of I said New York, but I'm glad you clarified it was New Jersey. But a lot of Syracuse representation, regardless of, as long as you're north of DC, there's pretty much some kind of representation depending on where you are. There are a lot of New York and New Jersey people here in North Carolina, so I get to run into Syracuse fans more than I ever thought I would, which is really, really neat. So I don't think I've ever seen them. I think I've seen them play in person a few times, but it's been a while. 2-3 Zone obviously is so famous. That's, we'll talk about them if they come up here in the next couple of minutes on one of these questions. But I like the NBA connection. Like you mentioned, the Tyler Ennis and Michael Carter Williams, who was obviously a high draft pick. There was a ton of dudes. Like Rakeem Christmas used to give State problems. I remember he never made the
double
NBA.
Machine.
But yeah, you expected 12 and 15, and you were like, all right, we're just we give up more than that, we're screwed. Every time.
Do you remember Cooney was his last name? Trevor Cooney, I think it
Probably.
was. He was the white shooter. What's his name?
I'm looking at an NBA list. If he's not on the NBA list, I'm not going to see it, unfortunately. But I don't think
he made the NBA. But he was a shooter from Syracuse. He's a 6'3" guard, and he used to come off them pin downs and light that boy on fire. Oh, I love to see it. It was such a great thing. Malachi Richardson also had his little run that got him into the league. We got some good teams, man. It was just you know, we were supposed to get Dior Johnson. Thank God we did it
Yeah,
because
kind of
for
worked out.
obvious
Yeah,
obvious circumstance. But I thought that would be the change in recruitment. And then when we lost Hopkins to Washington and he brought
yeah.
all his recruits there, you saw well he was doing, even though they haven't been great successfully. But you saw the recruits he was bringing. It just goes to show, like even the 2-3 you mentioned it, it's famous from Syracuse, but it's outdated. And Boeheim's recruiting process hasn't been great, and we're just in a slump, man. I don't know how we're gonna get out of this, man. Seriously.
It might just be a changing of the guard eventually. I don't think it's bad because, as you've seen, like with North Carolina, it can work. And that's just a funny segue, but with North Carolina, it can work with Hubert Davis. First year without Will Williams, they have a great season. Coach K with Shire, maybe a different conversation. So you can see how the two ends of the spectrum might turn out. I've got to see both those teams play live this year, and the coaching is the style and the what has happened is completely different. And we'll talk about all of these teams now. So before we surprise and disappointment is just too many. There's just too many subjectiveness to it. How many tournament bids do we think we get? Because obviously you mentioned Syracuse. I think they're the first true team on the bubble, quote unquote, for the ACC.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a tier difference. So I'll read the tier below for the listeners for context. Louisville, Georgia Tech, Notre Dame, Virginia Tech. I'm just going off ACC record. I just don't think Virginia Tech's going to make it. That slide killed them. Unless they
They're
do
done.
like they did. Unless they do like they did last year and they win the ACC tournament. Like that is what it is. But
I think everybody under Florida State, for them to get in, they would have to run the table at the conference
pretty
tournament.
much.
If they do not run the table, it's no hope. Especially Louisville. It's oh my god. They're
0
like
and 10
this
in
is the worst
conference.
Louisville. Yeah,
Done.
this is the worst Louisville team I've ever seen in my life. They're cooked. But yeah, I think Syracuse, Wake Forest. You can look at those teams as the bubble. I think Duke is going to get in. I do think Miami could possibly get in. I think like like I know for a fact I can say Clemson, Virginia, North Carolina. I think for a fact those three teams get in. I think Pitt also gets in depending on
That's
how
what
they
I was going
finish
to.
in
Yep.
a conference tournament, like depending on how they finish. But I think those four. NC State could sneak in. I would not be surprised at all. If they have a good, strong showing at the tourney, and then it always varies on the other teams, of course. But I think people should want to put NC State in the tournament just because of that type of firepower, the way that they could sneak a game or two in. So, but I think it's three for sure. Three for sure.
I love Lenardi because obviously you have to take into consideration his conversations with the committee, and you know that he is a lot more plugged in, which is why people were like,
Yeah.
why did Indiana make it last year? And then they did, and people were like, it's almost like Lenardi knows what he's talking about sometimes. So obviously he had, in this most recent bracketology last week, he had Clemson, Virginia without going through seeding. He had Clemson, Virginia, Pitt, North Carolina, NC State, Miami, Duke, Wake, all in some form or fashion, and then Syracuse was a first 4 in or 4 out, one or the other. So we're pretty much in agreement that right now, unless some of these teams I think Wake, like getting to see them the other day, like they're the team I'm kind of like, okay, is the line Wake now instead of Syracuse? Because Syracuse is obviously going to be bubble. They're going to have to win a lot of good games, but Wake has the same record at 6-5. They're capable of beating anybody, as we've seen that this year. They've got 3 really quality out-of-conference wins with Wisconsin, Rutgers, and there's one I'm forgetting off the top of my head now, of course. But I don't want to spend forever on Wake. I want to kind of break down and understand. Obviously, Clemson's number 1 at 10-1. That is, I'm just gonna say it. I did not see that coming. I'm just out. Like I was like, okay, well, and now I just did my top 25 this morning, and they're all. I think I slotted them in at 19, so which is nuts, right? It is what it is. Who do you think has the most legitimate chance to make a long run? That was how I wanted to pitch that because. Clemson is the obvious, okay, they're the best team in the ACC right now, but you have Virginia, Pitt, North Carolina, NC State, Miami, and Duke and Wake, who all have capable teams of doing it.
Well, yeah, just to briefly talk about Clemson, they are the second best defense in their conference and the best offense. So whatever they did, whatever happened in the offseason, they just decided to kick it into gear. And then when conference play happened, they said we're going to just run the table. So credit to them. I think the easy answer would be UNC. When you have Caleb Love, RJ Davis, and Armando, you have that 3-headed dragon. That's a tough team to beat. And then we saw last year, if they get hot, they can beat literally any team. But I think NC State, with a player like Turk Smith, and we've seen players like that before, Carson Edwards, they just go on a run in the tournament when they just can go on these scoring outputs and then they can put on a complete performance and then they can just will out, gut out wins. Remember, the tournament is only one game. So if it's only one game, you need one guy you need your guys to just show up, perform, do their thing. I think that's something you have to see. My only problem with them is just defense. NC State, especially in conference play, they're bottom five in the league in the tournament in defense. So that's something that they need to catch up. They need to fix up. But they're a top five offense, so they can score with anybody. I think my best bet would probably be NC State. I think I would go with them because they have the player, they have the high flying, high powered offense. Defensively, it's not that good, but I think in a conference setting, when you need to just win one game, I'll probably go with NC State. You're gonna love that because you're a big NC State guy, but I think I'll probably go with NC State definitely.
Yeah, guards win in March, and they probably have the three best, most consistent guards right now. I'm not going to overzealous anything because I sit here and talk about them when I get a chance or write about them when I get a chance. But at the end of the day, the defense is because their big rotation has been horrible. Not playing the guy that they got. They got Isaiah Miranda, to reclassify. They got him to join school early, and they got him to join the team within a week of all of that happening. And you want to guess how many minutes he's played?
Maybe 20.
0. They haven't played him yet, so it's like you lose a guy to a broken kneecap. DJ Burns has been absolutely unbelievable, fan favorite, and this is what I'll leave with. I think they can only because of the guard play. I think good guards win in March. I've said that forever. That is what the case is. The more I look at Clemson's schedule, I wanted to kind of give them their fair share of not fair share of flowers, but their only bad loss is at South Carolina. They lost by 2, and that was the second game of the season. So if you just want to throw that out, they don't have any bad loss. They lost by 3 at home against Iowa, or I think that was a neutral site game when they were 25th ranked at the time Iowa was. They beat Cal, which is at a conference game. But they're the Louisville of the Pac-12. But they beat Penn State, Wake, Towson, who's really good in their conference, Loyola Chicago, Richmond, and then they went on a streak here where they haven't lost in conference play until they lost at Wake last week. So,
yeah, and they got Miami coming up. Miami, North Carolina, back to back.
Yeah, I hate to give them this this is the team that I'm like, okay, I think is capable of it, but I just think their defense will step it up when they need to, especially if it comes down to, say, they get a weird matchup as those 5'11s or 6'12s or however that works out. Like if those are kind of tricky because you're like, that 11 seed only lost 3 games in their conference or only lost 3 games all year. But I just think Clemson's not going to lose to a team like that because their only real loss this year was they lost to Loyola Chicago, who, as we know, suffocates people on defense. They only gave up 58 points to Clemson. And then Wake was an 87-77 loss. So really, I think they can beat anybody right now, and I hate to give you the stereotypical, like, the best team in the ACC right now is the best team in the tournament coming up, but they probably are. Well, real quick, before we get to ACC Player of the Year, who has been the biggest disappointment, you think? Because obviously we just laid out everybody and went, okay. We know Louisville is kind of the obvious, but were they expected to be good? So who would you say is the biggest disappointment this year in the ACC?
Before I answer that, I do want to ask you a question.
Okay.
How do we feel about Virginia? Because I feel like this question. I'm asking this question because Virginia is always gonna play well in the regular season. They are always gonna bring that stout defense. They're always gonna be disciplined. But I feel like their offense is not suited for tourney time. I feel like their offense can get very stagnant. It can get very slow. They don't have enough creation within their guys. And then when you need buckets down the stretch, I don't think Virginia's sets are fully capable of doing that. So how confident are we in Virginia come conference play, come March, like in the tournament? How confident are we in that? Because they're the second best team in the ACC right now, but I don't know if I can fully confidently say that,
Well, so according to the AP Top 25, they're the 6th best team in the country. So
I don't believe that.
I like the question because I had this debate this morning with myself because a new voter to the Everything College Basketball podcast, having to put together a top 25. It forces me to think outside of why the AP would put people where. I don't care. The AP is stupid, but it makes me think because, and I want to answer this kind of in a funny way, but also want you to understand where I'm coming from. So somebody yesterday, I don't remember who it is. Sorry to them. I will find the tweet if I can, put it on the screen on YouTube. But someone said the other day, it was like, there are people in college basketball that cannot form an opinion without KenPom. And I'm going to form an opinion with KenPom for a reason. And I want it to be like, hey, just prefacing this, here's why I think this. So obviously the teams ahead of them, they're 13th in KenPom right now, and the adjusted efficiency margin that takes into consideration everything, record, health, strength, all that stuff. The teams behind them that I'm like, I would take over them immediately, who I completely believe in have a better offense, beat defense, whatever the reason is. They're 13th. Behind them directly is Baylor, TCU, Gonzaga, Iowa State, Rutgers, Indiana, West Virginia, Arkansas, and Xavier through 23 there. I would take 8 of those 10 teams behind them immediately.
Wait a minute. They have Baylor behind.
But that's look again. I'm just making the Ken Pom, I'm taking it with a grain of salt example because I would take Baylor's offense right now over Virginia's offense. I think their defenses are very similar. TCU's offense is one of the best in the Big 12, and they're definitely a better offense than Virginia. And defensively, they're not as far off as people think. Gonzaga, maybe I would have to think too hard. Iowa State's an unbelievable team. I would take over them. Rutgers is a team I would not. Indiana, if they're playing like they did last week, they're beating everybody pretty convincingly and having great guard play again. With
Are you taking
Indiana.
Kansas State over Virginia?
That's a
I
style.
feel like they're built similar.
It's
Yeah,
a
I feel
style
like they're
question.
built.
It's a style question.
I like them. I like Kansas State a lot.
I think the guard play is slightly better. I think that matters.
The Kansas games moved me. I'll be honest. They moved me a lot.
Yeah, I mean, to give you an idea, they're 25th behind them. So at that point, it starts to be obliviously obvious that, it's taking into consideration a lot more factors that don't affect Virginia, who has been a really healthy team. So I guess to answer your question, no. Do I feel confident Virginia is a team that we should be actually taking seriously, or however you worded that? No, I do not think. And I hate to be that guy to be like, well, here you go. Here's what I'm going to say now, and it's going to change later. I mean, if push comes to shove, they're not a top 4 seed in the ACC, which they will be. They'll be a top 4 seed. If they lose a couple games, if they're the 5th seed in the ACC, they're very capable of losing that first or second round game. And then at that point, they're going to get a lower seed. They'll get the 5 to 6 seed in the ACC tournament, or the NCAA tournament, excuse me. And then we'll be like, we'll all look stupid when they just go on a Sweet 16 run because they just played 2 teams that they were probably better than. So I hate to say the obvious answer is no, but, and it kind of overrate them in a sense, being 6th in the nation. But I'm just not confident in their offense. I'm with you there.
I do agree. I think, what's crazy? I think they can, even no matter how high their seeding is, I think they can lose to a lot of teams that are lower seeds because of the fact that how deficient their offense is. And when you have these new mid-major teams coming in, you've probably never seen them. You have to just watch you haven't played against them. They come in high-powered offenses, and sometimes like Virginia's offense against a lot of teams' offenses, I would probably take their offense anytime because it's just like they can become so stagnant at times, and it's hard to watch, and they can't get into their sets. Virginia's just not a team I'm rooting for, man. I'll be honest, but they always find a way.
Think about Florida Atlantic and Charleston, who obviously Charleston just lost their second game of the year and bumped them completely out of the top 25, which I think was kind of ridiculous.
Nuts.
But Florida Atlantic hasn't lost yet. 21-1 in Conference USA. They're 38th in Ken Pom, 113 adjusted offensive efficiency. So they're a great offensive team. They shoot the 3 really well. They're top 25 in the country in that. They go up against Virginia. I would be hard pressed to sit here and think for 3 hours probably, and I don't have 3 hours to pick. I don't have 3 hours to pick my tournament teams per matchup this year because I've got a lot of really important things going on the week of the tournament. So I got to Sunday night selection Sunday, get this figured out. That's why I'm forming these conversations now, which is why I'm glad you asked. I've been thinking about this about Virginia for a month, but I have no reason to fall back other than their offense just kind of scares me. So it's a great question. When it comes to the opposite of Virginia's offense would be the ACC Player of the Year, right? Who has been the best offensive impact player in the conference this year? I will say for the first time in almost a decade, I think this award is completely wide open, and you could give me 5 names, and I would think all of them are probably going to be right. So who do you right now? Because I'm battling this question internally. I just don't know who it is.
Man. I mean, I had 3 guys up here. I had 4, actually. I'll say I had 4. I would have put Judah up here if we were winning more games. I really would have, because he's been, the shooting isn't there, but defensively, controlling the offense as a playmaker, he's been there for my boys all season long, but the record isn't backing up. Gerard has been great too. Joseph Gerard, he's been great too as a scorer. But my 4 guys, I think I got to go Turk Smith is up there. I mean, what he's been doing, for NC State, I just think you have to put him up there, potential lottery pick, definitely a first-round pick coming up. He's been an elite scorer on both ends. He's been pretty much zoning the offense and just honing in on pretty much breaking down defenses. And the way he's able to score at all 3 levels is really good to see. Armando Bacot, you got to put him up there also, a damn near double-double machine. able to disrupt the game with his offense and defensively. Rim protection has been solid this year. And then my third guy, this is a sleeper. I'm gonna put Kyle Flip up there. I'm gonna put Kyle Flip up there because I think, and I tweeted about this because I thought Duke was unserious all season. I've been talking about it all year. Like they've been so unserious for me. I cannot take them serious. But the one thing I will say is every time I turn on the TV and I watch a Duke game, one guy that always stands out is Kyle Flip. The way he's able to run up and down the court, the way he's able to stretch the court, stretch the floor, the way he's able to get into the post, exploit mismatches. His passing has been underrated. His rebounding has been solid. He's been one of their most consistent players, and that's kept them in the race in the ACC. So that would be my three players. Of course, if we were better, my boy Judah Mintz got to put him up there.
I think he'll be intriguing for the draft next year for sure. I'm gonna kind of start building together next year's class, and I think he's a guy that'll benefit from returning and having a really good year. I'm gonna give you a name that I've been on all year. I wrote him in my 18 Division I North Carolina prospects. There's 18 schools in North Carolina, most Division I schools in a single state. I wrote a breakout piece about one of every team. Tyree Appleby for Wake Forest has been unbelievable. 17 and a half. I mean, he was the reason State almost lost on Saturday. I mean, just single-handedly carrying them through that second half when the offense was struggling. But 17 and a half for Wake on a winning team. They're 6-5 in conference play. Like I said, quality wins, 3 rebounds, 6.5 assists, or 6 assists. That'll go up or come down a little bit, but he's top 3 in the ACC in assist. 44% from the field, 37% from 3, 82% from the line. Obviously, if there's a most improved player, he didn't play in the ACC last year, so I don't remember how they determined that, but he deserves that if there's a most improved player in the conference award. I don't even remember if there is anymore because the conference awards make me want to throw up. But anyway, I think he deserves it, but I'm glad you said it because I like the Flip one. You know, it's Terquavion Smith. He's the best player in the conference. And I hate to sit here, and I don't want to do this. I really don't. I don't want your first impression talking to me on a podcast to be, man, this guy really rides that guy hard. But, like, I've seen him in person. They've played to, 20? How many games have they played? Most teams have played somewhere in that 25 range. I've seen the kid play 14 times. Okay, I feel like I have a good pulse on how good the guy is. You know,
he's played 22 games. Yeah.
So the fact that I don't know, it is what it is. He is the best player in the conference. He's the best scorer in the conference, and I do think Filipowski, if he keeps this up, I will say if they win a couple more games here, I think it'll come down to those two. The fact that I'm not even considering an RJ Davis or Armando Bacot, I just think the consistency of the performance has been there. Bacot's probably one we will probably both look back on and be like, why didn't we even consider Bacot? But he should always be in the conversation if he's averaging 15 and 12. I think is what he's averaging right now, or somewhere close to that.
I've been talking about Flip all year, man. People were sleeping on him. He was sleeping on him as a draft prospect. He's really a good player, especially for this new modern NBA. He can definitely be a guy that can be serviceable. I mean, everybody loved the Derek Whitehead name. He's coming out of Mount Verde. He's been incredible. He's been finding his groove, but Flip has been their best player. He's been their most consistent player, and you got to give your hat out to them. But yeah, Turk's been the best player. He's arguably been the best player in the conference for 2 years, the last 2 years. So last year, you can make a case he was this, but this year he's been the best player in the conference. I mean, man, you guys have the best 3-guard lineup in the conference, alone, arguably in the state, in the country. So Turk's just been made.
So much fun.
I mean, what do you think his draft profile is going to look like? Because I think he leaves this year. He should leave this year.
1,000%. Yeah, he's gone. Yeah. I thought he was last year. I had him as a first-round grade, somewhere in the late 20s, just because I think the shot making was there, but there's a lot of things that I wanted to see improve. And I was surprised he came back. I really was. I mean, I tell this story all the time, but I was recording our mock draft last year with my former co-host and a guest from No Ceilings, and I was like, I had everything laid out. We all had our picks, or where we were going to pick, and then obviously as you do a mock, you react to who picks where. And I got all the way to the 30th pick, and I'm like, the Nuggets would take him if they were in that position. They ended up taking Peyton Watson. I thought the Nuggets was a perfect fit. If obviously the Bones Highland thing didn't work out, he's worked out well. But I was fully prepared to I had a hoodie on, I had the State shirt under it. I was fully prepared to take it off and be like, Terquavion Smith's a first-round pick. I don't care what anyone says, and take him. And that was his announcement was 3 days before we recorded the mock draft. So I'm fully in on the first-round pick thing. not spoiling anything here because my big board version 2 releases on February 1st. I have him still as a top 10 pick. And I hate to sit here and do that and be that guy. But the on-ball defense has improved. The passing's improved. He led the ACC in passing for the last 3.5 weeks until Tyree Appleby had a great couple of games. He's an unbelievable understanding of playmaking, so like knowing when he needs to pick spots, and just being able to see that translate to the NBA level. My comp I would give you, even though people might hate comps, I like the Anthony Simons comp a lot. I really do think it's going to be a little slow.
I see it.
Take a few years. I don't think Portland's a perfect destination. Obviously, that's not what I'm saying. A destination like that where he can kind of learn from a more experienced guard. I don't like the Bones Highland comparison. He's taller. He's longer. So I think he can be a serviceable. Sure, people can say he can be Jamal Crawford, but I think the right situation matures him body wise. I think he can be a starter in the NBA.
Yeah, I think what's interesting about you could tell when people use the Bones Highland comparison, they don't watch Turk a lot because Turk's ability to control an offense is so much better than Bones Highland coming out. Like his ability to game plan and manipulate for a defense that's prepared to stop him. Bones Highland didn't have that. He was always a heat check. He will forever probably be a heat check. He's a volume scorer, but Turk's ability, especially this year, to really set up his players to be in positions to score and to literally break down the pick and rolls, break down the defense, a backline defense. It's been so much improved. It's beyond the numbers. He's truly evolved into a, set up type of point guard that can set up an offense and score. So I do like this Simons situation. I think depending on where, because, the guards it's a heavy position. So depending on where he goes, learning behind the vet will be cool. One place that could be a sneaky destination for him could be the Clippers. They need a guard. They don't have a guard. Turk come in. That could be a place where he can just learn, get that guard spot, places like that. Or even maybe Boston, learn behind Marcus Smart, learn behind Malcolm Brogdon, places either with veteran presence or that need guards, because we've seen a lot of the times, like Simons, you get put behind a star guard for a long time. He finally breaks out and becomes like an all-star guard. So that's something I definitely want to see. I want to see him go to a good place, though.
I like the Clippers one, except for the fact that every single person who has a platform has mocked that for a month, and I'm just like, it just means it's not going to happen. I've given that up.
Yeah.
I'm like, I think it would be the perfect destination, but it's not going to happen for that reason alone. I really would like Orlando if they're going to just start taking strides again and want to get him the ball more and kind of let him learn. Not really an experienced guy in front of him, I get at that point, but I think Orlando would be really, really fun.
I think Philly's another spot. Also, yeah,
Philly's good.
Philly
I like that.
They need another guard off the bench.
Also, it would give them more cap flexibility too, not feeling like they're forced to bring back Melton and things like that. So, you kind of did it on your own. So, segue to the NBA because I want to spend the second half of this talking about it. We've got a few things to go over. I don't like talking about fandom too much because we're trying to be honest, podcasters. I hate using that term, but it is what it is. Who would you say is do you have a fan of a team you grew up, et cetera? Who is that?
Oh,
so you don't?
Okay, so no, I do. Okay, it's crazy. This story is really crazy. I don't tell many people the story, but I'm going to tell you this. I like you. So I became a basketball fan, like NBA fan, because of Monte Ellis, LeBron James, and Darren Williams. So those guys really got me into the NBA. LeBron James was my favorite, so I said I'm going to be a Cavaliers fan. But I was really more of a LeBron fan. Nobody knows this fight because the way I hate LeBron now is kind of crazy. So Monte Ellis, Darren Williams, LeBron James. I loved Monte Ellis in Golden State. I thought he was the best player in the league. Me being young. Darren Williams, I thought he was better than Chris Paul. Like he was just so good to me. And I was like Utah, him, Boozer. You know what I mean? So I was just, I was young. So then LeBron has the, Orlando series. I'm like any other young LeBron fan. I'm crying. I'm in pain. This is supposed to be the one. So then I'm, that summer, he's not leaving. He's staying with Cleveland. He's going to bring us a ring. He goes to Miami. And I said, no, I can't believe he just did this. While I'm doing that, Derrick Rose gets drafted. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute. I'm starting to really like his games. I'm starting to pay a lot more attention to Chicago, but I'm also watching Cleveland games. So I'm going back and forth. Then LeBron leaves to Miami. And I was like, well, I hate Miami because I love Chicago. I like D Rose, Joakim Noah. I love them boys. So then I decided, you know what? LeBron left me. I cut LeBron off. And I've been a Bulls fan ever since. I still got my, you see my tweets. I still got my other fandoms. I love other teams and stuff like that. But I grew up watching Monte Ellis, Darren Williams, and LeBron, and I grew up a Cleveland turned to Chicago Bulls fan. I'm also a Cleveland fan again, though, because Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, Evan Mobley, I love them three. But yeah, that's the story.
Okay, so you're just walking right into my content. This is beautiful. So thank you for that. I love Monte Ellis. I do think it's an underrated answer because I mean the we believe is the obvious like whatever, but
Yeah.
there was really a debate at one point whether they kept Steph or not. Like that was like okay, Monte's crazy good, and 2K legend of course. Funny you say that about the tweets. I actually have. This is what we're going to talk about. The whole premise of the second half of the show. You have a pinned tweet, and I want to read it for those that don't know. And you know what it is. You're laughing already. By the way, these are the teams I will be rooting for and saying us to this season in order. And you have them in order as Chicago, Golden State, Clippers, Cleveland, Detroit, Oklahoma City, New Orleans, Orlando, Atlanta, and Utah. So a lot going on there, right? That's half the league. Let's be real. That's half the league. Or close to. I think it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So a third of the league.
1/3. Yep.
1/3 league. So we're going to play a game. And pick a side fashion because I have to give you guys a huge shout out. I am a Devin Booker truther, so you guys did the whole would you rather stuff throughout the last couple of months. And at one point I was like, I gotta ask, and I had a co-host at the time, Josh, I miss you. But we talked, and I was like, I basically defended Devin Booker till the end, and we did a would you rather with Devin Booker and Donovan Mitchell. So it was really fun going through the shooting guards in the league and seeing where we fell. So thank you for the inspiration on that. I did tag you in it, so I'm not taking it, right? Got to get the tag in there. No, but I want to play a game called Percentage Chance, and we're gonna go through a scenario or a question about the future of the team, or I have a question for each team except for one, the very last one with Utah, and you're just gonna answer that question, and we'll go from there. It'll kind of give you an idea of the broad landscape of the league and get your thoughts out there on a third of your favorite teams here. So.
Okay.
In order, we're going to go with the Bulls because they were the first one. Percentage chance, and you can give me the percentage and then we can explain it and talk about it. Percentage chance that the Bulls blow it up if they make the play-in or miss the playoffs.
Percentage chance. So if they make the playoffs or play-in, what's the percentage of them blowing it up?
Because if they're like a 7 through 10, like that'll be considered a failure for whatever, like however you want to. Percentage chance that they blow it up if they don't make a top 6 seed in the East. That would be a better way to word it.
71%.
Okay. I like how specific that is. Why is that? That's what I want to talk out. Because I think I'm with you. I think they consider blowing it up.
So they've been pretty adamant on keeping this core together, right? They've been, Caruso, untouchable for the culture. Sure. Zach, we just gave him a bag. DeMar, he's been amazing. Right. Okay. So they are very, very, very high on this core. Lonzo Ball hasn't played ball in 20 years. So now think about it like this. They're high on this core. This core miss the play-in or going to play-in and they lose. Vooch's contract is up. DeMar turns another year. We still have yet to see Lonzo Ball play. The direction AK has shown the ability to make a playoff team in 2 years. He very fresh. He had the Vooch trade. We didn't make the playoffs that year. He brought in DeMar. He brought in Caruso. He brought in Lonzo. We made the playoffs the next year. It's something you got to give him credit for. He pretty much turned the bad team into a good team in the span of 2 years. I think he's going to understand. I'm putting my faith in AK that this team is not good where it needs to be. Vooch's contract is up. Pat Will hasn't progressed like you want to. And because, him being hurt all the time, but also you got ISO players like DeMar, Zach in front of him, Vooch. That's not really a place for a young player to develop their game, their offensive game. So, but then you got guys like IO. Kobe White has been on the market for a long time. I think once we realize we get pretty much humbled, when the front office gets humbled, they understand moves have to be made. And then that's why I think 71%, undoubtedly. Might go up to 80%.
I like it. It's still a little conservative, but, it's like they might not, I guess would be kind of my point. The Lonzo thing's tough because, like, how many more years can you give him in this core to be like, okay, well, and the only reason I even say that, I wasn't even going to bring it up, but you did. I mean, literally this week, the last update, or at the end of last week, I guess, because we're recording this on Monday, January 30th, but was that he's nowhere close again. Like, it's like I was seeing strides. He was saying this. He was walking this way. And then Billy Donovan, who I would trust, I guess at that point, obviously it's not his body, but I would trust Billy Donovan, who gets to see the guy develop and work and coach. And it sucks. He should be on the floor, and it sucks for these injuries. And it's a huge thing you have to take into consideration that nobody's going to take him at this point, which
the
sucks.
whole we would be better if Lonzo. We have to stop as Bulls fans. Stop saying that he has not played ball in so long, and the league is so different now. Like the East is completely different than what it was last year. So it's like, and we don't even know what type of player he would be coming back. So it's like we got to give that up, man. I mean, this guy is literally on an ACL injury. I know they messed up his first surgery, but now it's surgery number 2. He still can't walk. So how bad is it, you know?
I always hate the term when there's smoke, there's fire, especially near the trade deadline. Obviously, we're a week and a half away from the trade deadline talking now, but I don't know. And the reason I bring up the smoke fire thing was because I don't know if the Ayo Dosunmu rumors were from the Hornets in front office, who doesn't talk at all publicly, or if that was a true, genuine rumor that I need to be thinking about and start asking people about, because if they move Ayo, they're blowing it up. Like that is a piece for their core that they need to keep. And if he's, maybe I'm over exaggerating Ayo, but like he's good and he needs to stay there, especially being a younger guy. Why get rid of him if you're not blowing it up, right? Like why not?
Yeah,
keep him?
that's one of the few guys that's been so good with us, and he's been young. You know, you got to keep something. Like even though Lonzo hasn't played, he's young. You know, if we don't trade him, that's fine. You know, we can keep him, and when he plays, you know, Zach, you got to keep him because you just paid him $200 million. But we don't have many young players, so if you give up on Ayo, that means everybody's going, because at
Correct.
this point he's the only young promising player. Him and Pat Will, and Pat Will's contract, we're gonna have to pay him eventually soon. So it's just a terrible situation all around. And hopefully they figure it out fast so they can try to fix it and get back to winning basketball eventually. Because we literally have, outside of that 1 year, like 6, 7 years of just dreadful pain, pain, pain.
It's been hard to watch, especially since Derrick Rose's injuries took over from that decade, and I
Please
hope they get
don't
back to
even remind
prominence.
me.
I know. I'm just for the context of that 10 years you're talking
Yeah,
about.
the D Rose injuries put me in so much. And then D Rose wins the MVP, and they build a Giannis like wall against a 6'3" point guard, and you don't understand for a team with Dwayne Wade, LeBron James, Chris Bosh, they had to build a wall to stop a 6'3" point guard that are built for guys like Giannis. You don't, and then D Rose that summer was supposed to get Melo. He doesn't go to the interview. He doesn't go recruit him. And now we're like, yo, bro, like, and then Melo goes back to the Knicks. And now we're back to the same team. And then D Rose injures his knee in the playoffs because Thibodeau was playing him in a 14-point blowout, like 4 minutes left.
It pops
Next
up on
team.
any scenario that says, change one guy's injury career. It's the first one for me every time. And I'm not a Bulls fan. It's the God's honest truth, because there might be, and I'm not saying they would have won the finals that year. They would have played up a lot of good teams out of the West there, but he is number one in, like, if I could change anybody's career, Brandon Roy might be second, but it's still like number one. Derrick Rose changing that guy's career again, even though he's done a great job turning it around with his former coach in his role in New York. Tying these next team together so we can keep. There's some of these you probably won't have anything to say about. It'll probably be like, all right, that's it, number this percentage and move on. But tying these two teams together, talking about the Bulls blowing it up, Alex Caruso it will be a coveted piece if they do decide to blow it up, because he's a championship level defender for a team like, drum roll, the next team on your thing, Golden State. Golden State is the next team on there. Simple question, hate to be this way, but percentage chance they reach the finals this year is one percentage I want, and then the second one is percentage chance they win the finals.
So, percentage chance they make the finals 65%. Percentage chance they win the finals 65%. Because, like, I'll be honest with you, since Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond have played every game in the series, nobody other than LeBron, actually, no, because Draymond didn't even play every game in that series. So when those three play every single game, no team since their era has fully started has beaten them. And I know Denver's scary. I know Memphis has been great. I know the Pels, when they're healthy, is scary, but there's still not many teams that can beat that starting five in a 7-game series. You're not going to have the better coach in any scenario in the West. You're arguably not going to have the better player. most teams outside of Denver and maybe Dallas, you can debate that back and forth. But other than those two teams, you're not going to have the better player. And then they have one of the best net ratings in the league when they're starting 5 plays. So it's, the bench thing is a worry, but I still think a Warriors team is a dangerous team. Coming into the playoffs, that's still a team you don't want to see in the first round. That's one of the most dangerous first round matchups you can get. And then in the East, oh, I'm comfortable. Oh, I am laughably comfortable. I mean, you look at the Bucks. Middleton is hurt. What's going on with him? Giannis is having a low efficiency year. You look at Boston. When they both played, you can tell Golden State still rattles them. Golden State still understands their offense. That scheme is very hard to beat for Boston. The Nets is a tricky one. The Nets is the one team that's a tricky one for me because that's a team that, as you can see, the first time we played them with our starting five, Kevin Durant didn't play, and they beat us. We choked like a 14-point lead in the fourth quarter. So that's the one game I look at like this is a tough team defensively. They can switch pretty much almost everything. They give us a lot of trouble. Philly, I don't even think they'll make it, so I'm not really going to pay too much mind to that. But that'll also be a bad matchup because Embiid can completely dominate us. But yeah, like John Morant said, I'm fine in the West. I'm very fine in the West.
I like it. I like the Josh slander too. Clippers are the next team, and I'm only bringing this up because there are credible people that bring this up, and I just think it's worth having the conversation about because this will be year 4 with this core, or 3, I guess technically because of his player option, him being Kawhi. I hate to ask this because I do think it's possible because of the way the NBA is nowadays, but percentage chance Kawhi or Paul George, you can choose, or you can do both, is traded this offseason if they don't make the finals or win it.
80%, and it'll be Paul George.
I'm with you. That's why I brought it up. Thank you. Because I think people are not realizing how not dead Kawhi's value is, but like it's just not there. When you don't play, I don't know. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. But like when you don't play consistently, what is a team right now? Like it's not like Toronto in 2019 where they were like Masai Ujiri knew he was hurt in the Spurs, bad environment at that point. He wanted to get out. Like nobody knew that they were going to win the title with Kawhi Leonard immediately. That's just not what was predicted. And obviously Masai, that paid off. But like, what team right now is trading Kawhi Leonard, or for Kawhi Leonard? There's not many. I mean, the Pelicans maybe. But what are they giving up? Like they'll give up the Lakers pick. Like I just don't like it. Yeah, what team needs him that bad? Maybe I talk out loud. The Pelicans actually makes kind of sense, but I think, regardless,
it's interesting because I think Paul George is he's also has his injury concerns, but I think right now you can arguably say he's the better player, based off the fact that when he plays, he's been an elite player on both ends of the floor. I think he's not getting enough credit because they're not winning a lot of games. But, he's a rhythm player. And when you don't play because you're hurt, that rhythm can be shaken. But he's in the high percentiles in playmaking this year, defense. The thing with Paul George is, though, he's an easier plug-and-play player than Kawhi. He can probably fit with most stars or with most players because of the fact that he can, space the floor a little bit better. He's a better catch and shooter. He's just a better shooter in general. So that's something you like to see. He's a better playmaker. But I think this year, because for me this is year 4. Even though they got hurt, you have to put the injuries into consideration because you always have that gamble, especially with the Nets. They have that gamble with Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving. There's guys who gets hurt, so you always have that gamble. This is year 4. The first year, they choked in the bubble, 3-1. Year 2, Kawhi gets hurt. That could have started what would be a chip. They could have won the chip that year. They went to the WCF. They lost the Suns at 6. It was a tough series. They could have won the chip that year. Year 3, Kawhi gets hurt. PG has them in the playoffs, but he gets hurt. They lose in the play-in. PG gets COVID. He couldn't play in that Pelicans game in the play-in in LA. So the thing is, they're never truly healthy when they need to be. Now you made all these moves. You have this stacked deep roster. This is the end of the line for the Clippers. I mean, if they don't at least make the finals, what are you going to say? I mean, there's no more to keep pushing forward. These guys are only getting older. The roster has no real youth. So I don't see the point in keep pushing forward. So I do think if they don't win the finals, it's 80% chance Paul George. And his contract is up next year. Kawhi and Paul George, they're on player options. The contracts are up next year. You might as well trade him now and see what you can get if you don't win the finals.
Important context, too. The stadium's supposed to be built in the next 2 to 4 years, depending on the funding and how fast it gets built. That's going to be really important at a crossroads for a franchise who has 2 guys that are starting to get in their mid-30s, where you're going to have $1 billion. Not that Steve Ballmer can't afford it. I'm not tying that to a reason, but not that Ballmer can't afford it. But that stadium and that fan base a
Who are you going to
half.
put in there?
Well, hey, people don't even want him there anyway. Let's just be real.
Yeah.
It is what it is. Like half the it's Laker town. It is what it is. But it a lot to consider too because they've only played give or take 15 to 20 games as a core together this year because of the Kawhi slow start, and then Paul George missed about 10 games right or 8 games right after Kawhi got back. So they've really only played about 10, 15 games or so together. They're 14-11 at home, which is not good. They're 14-14 on the road, which is also not good. And they just aren't. They're starting to get this stride where it's like, okay, well, yeah, you can sit here and tell me that they're fourth, not you, but whoever can sit here and tell me they're fourth in the West at 28-25. That would be the 7th seed in the East. So the bloodbath of the West is very prevalent, right? You have 34-win Denver team, 32-win Memphis team, 27-win Sacramento team. They're clearly not the 4th best team in the West. That's what I'm getting at. And in the East, they would obviously record-wise be a lot further down. I'm skeptical of the fact they even make a run, which is why I brought the finals thing in consideration, where I think the number is less if you're just like, okay, if they make the second round, we'll keep them together. Then you guys start thinking about what those player options mean. So I think Paul George, I'm with you, is the reason, or is what they move, and if that's the reason.
I mean, you look at it before, they went on a run, and then they sit everybody for the Atlanta game yesterday. So it's like you can't even fully get the rhythm. Like you just were on a 4 or 5 game win streak, and then you sit everybody for most guys for the Atlanta game. So it's like then you get the was that Atlanta? Whoever they played yesterday, they got
Atlanta.
the breaks. Yeah, they got the breaks beaten off them. Not Atlanta. No, it was a team after Atlanta. Who was it?
I just did my yesterday in the NBA video today too. I should have remembered that. Whoever they played yesterday, I'm with you. I know who you're talking about, but I can't get it out.
Yeah, they because they beat Atlanta, and then they went out there. It was a road trip, and then they sat everybody. And they got
Cleveland last night.
Yeah, it is. They got destroyed. They got completely. I mean, Garland and Mitchell played, so you knew what was going to happen. So it's like they don't even fully let themselves get in rhythm.
Yeah, the whole load management conversation, Richard Jefferson's videos, things like that. I'm just all those opinions that people are out there. I'm not ready to make a load management rant video yet because I think they're not the only problem child. There are multiple teams that are the problem child. So I think I'm willing to realize that they have struggled with injuries the last 4 years, but they've also contributed to it as a whole. Speaking of Cleveland, who they just played, good again, just falling right into our lap here. Cleveland, percentage chance they make a trade before the deadline to push for the title, and then who is it and why?
28%, because they don't have any picks to really send out, and they don't have many. Yeah, they don't have many assets to really trade. I mean, Rubio, he's not somebody you would trade. Levert's contract is hefty, but he's not a player nobody really wants. I mean, maybe because he's on expiring, but you have to add picks to that. They don't have any picks. So, I mean, a player that I can just throw out that they would need, they can use a Bojan type of player, Bogdanovich. That would be a good player. Eric Gordon would be cool, something small, like so just somebody on the wing, that can defend, space the floor, something like that. But they don't have any assets to really give up to make a trade. So definitely in the 20s. I don't think they make a move at all. I mean, the buyout market maybe, but not a trade.
Yeah, and I think that can this core make a long run? I say long run. Let's go Eastern Conference Finals or further. Probably even without a move for a 3-and-D type player. I don't think Jay Crowder is the kind of, especially with the situation sitting out in Phoenix, I don't know if he's the perfect answer. He is a guy that's available. I don't think they have enough, especially what Detroit's asking for Bojan, but I'm with you. I think it's pretty low, but it's just a matter of who. I think they'll probably end up finding a few things. They may get another backup big just to be safe with Jared Allen's injury last year. People like the Clippers, the Cavs, teams that are kind of right there in the mix still midway through the year, about to hit the All-Star break. Somebody after the All-Star break always goes on a 20-5 type run. Every year, you can go back and look. It is just consistent. Somebody goes on a 25 type run. I don't think it's Cleveland necessarily, but I think that player before the deadline would help them massively. Speaking of Bojan on the talking about the Pistons, this is happening every time. Percentage chance that if the NBA redrafted the 2021 NBA draft, that Cade is still number one.
In my opinion, 100%. I don't think there is nothing that's shown you that anybody should go ahead of Cade. I mean, maybe Mobley, but if you look at the direction that Detroit was at, they wanted the best player. They want the guy that's a franchise changer, an MVP-like caliber player, and that's Cade Cunningham. I don't think Jalen Green's year 2 advancements would tell you otherwise. I think Wagner, as good as he's been, you still won't take him over Cade. I think Mobley defensively has been one of the top 5 best defenders in the NBA, but offensively, he still has his limits, and you still think Cade will have a higher ceiling. And I think Am I missing? Oh, Scotty Barnes. I don't think you would take Scotty over Cade. I mean, even no matter, there is just no scenario. Cade has a higher ceiling. So I think, and Cade getting hurt is what messed him up. I think Cade getting hurt in back-to-back years, last year starting off with an injury, and then this year missing the year, I think that really put his stock down and people forgot like he's really, really good. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see next year, but I'm still very high on Cade going number one in the redraft, and he's going to prove me right down the road.
I'm with you. I was a Mobley guy in that draft pre their NBA careers, but at the end of the day, even I understand that looking back on, I'm reading out loud, Jalen Green, Evan Mobley, Scotty Barnes, Jalen Suggs, Josh Giddey, Jonathan Kuminga. Franz Wagner would be the one where people start talking because, you can say it's good stats, bad team. That's what I like to say about a lot of those guys in their early careers, but he's been really good. And it's hard to not look up and go, well, the Magic are winning games, and you can't always say it's Paolo. Davion Mitchell, Zaire Williams, and then after that, it doesn't really make any sense other than Şengün. So I think it would be a conversation, but I'm with you. I think right now, and I asked that question indirectly for a reason. I wanted to see how you would answer it, where would the Pistons do it as a different percentage probably. Would you do it? And you went with that, which I like, is 100%, and I'm with you. I think he would go one still. I think it would be a tough conversation with Green, Mobley, Giddey.
I do think Mobley goes two, though.
I do
think
too.
Mobley goes two. Like, there's just, the Rockets messed up. And I said it on, pick Mobley. No matter what's going to happen, he's going to come in and be an elite defender from day one. And he has been that from day one. Jalen Green's going to take time. Mobley is going to change the game or change the landscape from day one. They should have went Mobley with two. But, who am I? And Kuminga's still going to be a star. Please don't sleep.
I'm with you. I did not do official big boards then. I've been doing draft evaluations for 5 years publicly as big boards. This is year 2. And last year we did this thing where we were like, or whatever draft it was now, 2 years ago, but we did it where we were like, okay, this is our 5 guys that we think are going to be not NBA like all-stars, but just our 5 favorite guys. I had like Quentin Grimes on there. I was proud of that one. There's a couple others, but like Kuminga was number 1 for me in that draft. Like in terms of guy, I just really believed in the talent and potential. He's still super young. I'm with you. Maybe I would waver some down from star, but I do think he's going to be a really impactful player in the NBA, whether it's 3-and-D, whether it's a championship level wing, whether it's whatever you want to call it. So he would be very impactful.
I had James Bucknight on that list, so that hurt.
Yeah, my former coach is a Hornets fan, so it hurts him more than you think. So, with that being said,
the UConn tape fooled me, man. The UConn tape fooled me, man. He was so good at UConn. Oh my god!
But like that's the shot chucking thing. Like so was Jalen Green in the Jew League, but yet like there was more impactful NBA level scoring talent there.
Yeah,
that's where that draft class gets weird because like Davion Mitchell drafted at 9. I understand it is the Kings, but like Josh Primo at 12. There's so many guys behind them that I would rather have had now. Trey Mann, Trey Murphy, Kai Jones even at that point. I'm talking just guys in that same position. Quentin Grimes being 25th was dumb. Bones Highland being 26. Cam Thomas 27. Another guy I was really high on, Cam Thomas, at least in terms of bucket getter.
I.O. was in the second round, if I'm not mistaken.
Just getting down to there, it looks like Herb Jones was 35th. I mean, good grief. Santi Aldama, who's still playing now. Miles McBride, who's playing again. I.O. was 38th. I.O. was 38th. Yeah. This draft's going to be one of those ones we look back on and we're like, interesting. And we're going to kind of start playing around with those later. So the Thunder is the next team on this list. The Thunder, this is my favorite question. The Thunder win a playoff series next year. Percentage chance.
Next year
they win a playoff series. This is the team right now that will probably make the play-in and has a really good chance of being a top 6 seed, depending on how things fall, if they make a good run. And I'm just giving you my case for why my percentage is probably going to be pretty high. But and they're just basically reinserting Chet Holmgren, who's obviously coming out of Gonzaga, was an unbelievable shot blocker and three-point shooter.
I'm going to go 65%. And I say that because I'm changing. I'm going 70%. Because I think right now it's very rare to have young players playing high-level defense. And what they have in OKC is they're a good defensive team. They are led by SGA, Giddey, Dortz, and Jalen Williams, which we definitely slept on that one. But they are a really good defensive team without a rim protector and a shot blocker. And now you're bringing Chet, who's instantly going to impact that level of the game. Depending on what veterans they bring in the offseason and whoever they bring in the draft, I don't see why they couldn't win a playoff series next year, especially with the way they're playing right now. I mean, they've been a consistently solid team all year, and they're just making noise now. If they bring in Shet, and Shet is who we think he is, then they bring in veterans because the next free agency class is a lot of vets, a lot of good role players. They bring in guys from free agency. I definitely can see this team winning a playoff series. Against who? I don't know. But seeding is all about matchups. You know, they get the right matchup, they can win a playoff series. I can definitely see it. So I'm going to go 70%.
I'm with you. It's very matchup dependent on that prediction. It's hard to know that this far away. But in terms of defensive rating this year, I mean, they are in the top. They're a top 10 team in defensive rating. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. They're ninth in defensive rating, ahead of some really good potential playoff teams. Shea is unbelievable. I'm not going to get on my Shea soapbox anymore, but he's deserving of the All-Star. I gave him every day I could vote that I remembered he was my All-Star starter. I think he deserved it. And I think at this point, for him to make a jump from, and I'm not saying it's a most improved player type jump, but I am saying he is single-handedly the reason they are winning more games, because he went from a guy that we were considering a fringe all-star to a potential first-team All-NBA player and first all-star starter. That is a huge jump. There's a big reason for that, being number one in drives and being top 5 in rim scoring as a guard. The next guard behind him, by the way, if you didn't know, was 35 spots down. So he is.
Is it John Morant?
I don't even remember. I looked at it yesterday. But the next guard down, I think Ja probably was. I think it was Ja. But either way, like, as a guard who's getting to the rim, and like, it is just at this point we're seeing it's an unstoppable play, and it is what it is. That's why they're winning these close games. We got a couple more. Pelicans, Zion and Ingram percentage chance are both healthy for a run this year. Pretty simple one because I don't really have a perfect question for them.
Well, I don't even. Why did I put the Pels up there? Oh, because I'm a Dyson Daniels fan. Yeah, love Dyson. Love Dyson, man. He's going to be the starting point guard. Yeah, he's going to be the starting point guard. I had him going to Washington. I thought he would be perfect if he went to Washington, run the floor, run the unit, but whatever. You know, they make mistakes all the time. Percentage that BI and Zion are held 40, 35, 40%. I mean,
That's bad.
this is starting to look like they're looking like the young Clippers. I mean, they're hurt every week. You know, it's starting to become really bad. BI was out with a toe injury. Zion's probably going to have injury concerns throughout his career. I mean, then you have Trey Murphy missing time, Dyson missing time, Herb Jones missing time, and I mean they've developed some good role players: Najee Marshall, Jose Alvarado. You know, I think those Larry Nance Jr. But this team has been banged up all year. They would be so much further in the standings if they were healthy, and it sucks to see. But I don't know. I don't know if I can trust this team come playoff time because one, they don't have the proper continuity because they don't play enough games together. They don't have the type of game experience to even go into a playoff series fully as a group, and they're always hurt. A guy can get hurt at any moment. So I would say 35, 40%. This team is just too injury problematic for me.
I think we all got a little excited a little too early at the beginning of the year when they had a good run. Even before the year, I was one of those teams. I was like, or one of those people that was like, yeah, they're capable of being a sleeper for the finals. I'm not going to say they aren't. It's just going to be dependent on a lot of different factors that
And then people are gonna see this and be like, well, the Clippers always hurt all the time. Well, the difference between the Clippers and the Pels is we know who Kawhi is when healthy come playoff time. We kind of understand who Paul George is when healthy come playoff time. We know how Tyronn Lue coaches when healthy come playoff time. I know people love that BI series last year. That was one playoff series. We've never seen Zion in a playoff series. I mean, like, we don't know what these guys fully are together come playoff time. So that's the real difference between the Clippers always getting hurt and the Pels always getting hurt. Is we kind of understand who those guys are. We're still trying to figure out who the Pelicans are.
I'm with you. And we did get a good glimpse of what Zion could be in a playoff series. That week he had that 45-point game. I watched the end of that game live because I love working on stuff and just having League Pass on. And then when it gets to the final 4 minutes, I'm like, okay, this is where I really care about when guys are good. And that was probably the most impressive 4 minutes other than maybe De'Aaron Fox this year consistently because obviously he's been the best clutch player by far statistically. So, yeah, seeing Zion in those moments is really, really promising, but seeing them in a playoff series for 4 straight rounds is going to be the part I'm just very out on, and that's why I'm with you. I think both healthy to make a run is how that question is interpreted, and 30+% is probably pretty good. I had a lot of fun with this next question and this next team. Franz Wagner and Paolo Banchero for the Magic both make the All-Star team next year. I don't want to start playing with playoff odds for them. I don't want to start getting flirty with them because I think they can make the play in and win, but I don't. There's a lot to happen in the next 3 months, basically. I think next year's a good thing to think about right now for them.
I'm gonna go 75%. I think Banchero comfortably makes the All-Star game next year.
Correct. Yes.
I think Wagner is the one, but I don't think in the East they have many elite wings. I think Kevin Durant's getting up there in age, and he always is hurt around the All Star game. Jimmy Butler's getting up there in age. You have Randall, you have RJ, but I think Wagner can be better than both of them next year. You look at other guys like DeMar, he's getting up there in age. I think Wagner has a strong chance to make the All Star game next year. I think he can definitely get in. He just has to continue to improve his game, and they have to win more. Magic win more. He's constantly improving because you mentioned it earlier. You said they're not only winning games because of Boncaro. No, they are not. Wagner has been a part of that, and he's been his huge stride in year two is because of that. Underrated playmaker, solid defender. I'll give it a 75%, definitely.
All right. We got two more. I'm with you, by the way. 75% is probably where I would slot him perfectly right now. Percentage chance for the Hawks. This one's going to be fun, and the Hawks fans hate me. So by the way, if I had a least favorite franchise that hates me, it's Hawks fans. Percentage chance Trae Young requests a trade from the Hawks in the next 18 months. For perspective, that is the July of 2024 offseason. So I'm giving a decent timeline because I think a lot will go down, but it's a matter of, A, they haven't fired Nate McMillan. Just want to be upfront about that. He's still employed as a Hawks coach, which should not be the case. And then, obviously, we're going to see how this DeJounte Murray thing works out for longer than a year. So, obviously, I wanted to give it a little bit more time to see you're taking consideration next year being a flunk again. So, percentage chance that he requests a trade from the Hawks by July of 2024, which is 18 months.
I'm going to change up my answer. He won't request. They will trade him by that mark. I give it an 88% chance they trade him by that mark because he is hard to play with, he is hard to manage, he's hard to coach, and his game is very, very, very simplistic in the fact that you have to have the perfect role players around him to kind of benefit his traits. He is the worst defender in NBA history. If I had to choose between him or Muggsy Bogues, I'm choosing Muggsy Bogues. He is a better defender than Trae Young. He is 7 inches shorter. Put that into perspective. That's truly embarrassing. He refuses to play off ball. He's not Luka. You don't want anybody outside of Luka and LeBron with that type, or James Harden in that stretch. With that type of usage rate with the ball, because it doesn't lead to conducive wins. And in the playoffs, you can't win like that. So I think this Atlanta Trae Young debacle will be over, but I think it's because Atlanta ends up trading him because they can get a lot back for Trae Young. Like, that's a high-profile player. He's a top 15 player in the NBA. You can get a plethora of picks and assets for Trae Young. So I'm gonna go Hawks trade him.
I want to talk about this because I think it's at least getting out there, like putting it out there. Not that there's receipts that need to be had, but just obviously I told you Hawks fans already hate me, so that's okay. But I think the two things that took me a long time to come up with this question and really understand it is that yes, defensively, I'm with you. I've been saying it for years. It is what it is. He's one of the worst defenders. I was just saying worst defenders currently, but when you take all-time consideration, he's pretty bad. So, and I would love somebody to do a deep breakdown of that. But with that, I think I was like, okay, it would never happen, right? And that's why I brought up he requests the trade. And I'm intrigued why you went the other direction because – and then I thought about it. You're right, because why would Travis Schlenk, who didn't draft him, and why would Landry Fields, who's now in charge, have any tie to him? They didn't draft him. And if they want to build a championship roster and they don't believe in him, they're going to trade him. It is what it is. That is how it's going to work. So I was like, there's no way they do this. This is 0% chance. And then I thought about it. The other, if I talking to ourselves to a camera earlier, right? This is the kind of conversations that I've tried to challenge myself on when I do solo shows, which, by the way, haven't happened in a month or two because I've had some great guests. Thank you. But help me not have to talk in front of camera. But it's been crazy to try to talk myself in and out of these arguments. And the whole point I'm bringing up is, the front office has no tie to him anymore, right? Like, at that point, they did not draft him. I think that really does matter when you have a superstar like that who you can get rid of for the best possible package. However, I think I disagree with you on the sake that the package might not be as good as we think, only because of that defensive value. Now, what he brings offensively to a team, and why, if you look along, and we don't have time to go through every single team and go why they wouldn't trade for Trae Young, but think about the guard play you mentioned earlier in the league. Like, there's a lot of teams right now, like, Bill Simmons does his famous, like, every year the trade value list or whatever, right? And, like, understanding how many teams wouldn't trade for a point guard. There's probably 20 teams right now that are absolutely perfectly content with their point guard as championship contenders in the next few years. And at that point, you're
You're not
eliminating a
wrong.
third of the league. And that's why I'm like, okay, percentage chance that he requests a trade, pretty high. Percentage chance he gets moved for a good value, it's a way different story, which is why I wanted to at least not have the conversation per se, but it just at least be honest with it, because I don't think he's a good player sometimes. I think there are situations where he's an unbelievable player, and I think he's changed his game and shown that he can this year alone. His percentages were horrible, and he started to be a better playmaker throughout the year, and now his percentages are starting to come up because he's taking less shots. But I do
He
think
takes horrible
Murray,
shots.
yeah, I think Murray's impact is being felt even more as we see him take less shots. I think we're realizing that
I'm,
Murray's a really helpful piece.
I think Orlando will be a team that jump on it.
Oh yeah,
A team that, yeah, I think Orlando, because the way they build their teams, they put wings out there, long, lengthy. You build a team like that, even Toronto, a team like that, if they was hypothetically, obviously not, but if they had Trae Young as a point guard and they had those guys wrapped around them, that's like they can mask that defense because they have a bunch of long, lengthy guys. But yeah, you're right. If I had to like, because this is just off the top of my head, because Trae Young, you think top 15 player, you think, oh, massive return, yeah, of course. But when you think about it, you're right. Like a team like Boston, they probably don't have a top 15 point guard in Marcus Smart. But in terms of value and what he brings to the Celtics and how valuable he is for them, he's probably top 10, 5 most valuable for them. So they probably wouldn't trade Marcus Smart. So yeah, you're probably right. If I had to really like look at teams, probably, yeah, I get with you.
it's a really long dark rabbit hole that if you just sit down and honestly, it's honestly probably a great article, because you could sit here and go through all 30 teams and be like, here's exactly why in 3 paragraphs why this team would or wouldn't do it. And it's the perfect example. I love Marcus Smart's example. It's the perfect example of this guy means more to us than he does to you. And in the Trae Young sphere of things, there's just not a lot of teams, whether it's point guard related or not, that are going to want that. And you have to change entirely how you build them, which is why I think Orlando, a young team, would be willing to do it because they don't have a point guard. So, yes, it's a really, really slippery slope of a conversation, but I do think that Atlanta, and I do trust Landry Fields. I am on record about that. I was really vying for him to get the job last time, and then Schlenk got it. So Landry Field, I think, is really, really intelligent. I think he knows what he's doing. Obviously, he's an Ivy League guy and was an NBA player, understands the business. Like, I think he's really, really qualified to be able to figure this team out, and I hope that he does, because that timeline is really, really important as they start to have to pay these guys again. So, all right, the last team, Utah. I'll be honest with you, this team just completely floored me like everyone else. It is what it is. Like, I didn't want to come up with some stupid question like Laurie or this or that or how their playoff chances are or what percent chance they get Victor Wembanyama, whatever. It doesn't matter. I want you to give me a percentage chance for the Jazz. I don't have one. I literally got every single one of these done, and I sat here for a week and a half since we moved it back a week, and I still don't have a Jazz question. So whatever, it doesn't have to be anything big, but like, what do you have to say about the Jazz? Anything about the Jazz you just want to get out there?
I did a video on them the other day. I didn't drop it yet because I tinker a lot. But I did a video about the Utah Jazz. The Utah Jazz are in a very peculiar, interesting place. They have a young, bright star in Lauri Markkanen that's on a team-friendly deal, right? They have Walker Kessler, who they picked up in the draft. We traded for him, blah, all that extra stuff. And he's been great. He's been a great rim protector. He moves his feet well. He's a great rebounder. Then they have Jordan Clarkson, who as a starter has pretty much turned into one of the best shot makers in the league, one of the best clutch players for them. Mike Conley has been a great playmaker for them. Then they got guys like Vanderbilt. They picked up Oche from Cleveland, so they got him. It's Kelly Olynyk too, Miss Malik Beasley. They've been great. So they have a perfect squad for a star to go there, and that team can be competitive. That team can legit be a playoff contention team. Like if you put somebody like say for example, you get a player like Paul George, right? Like, an all-star. That team would be a comfortable playoff team for what, 4, 5, 6 years, right? If you get a player like Paul George. But now if you bump it up a little bit, right? You get a player like Jason Tatum or a player like who's a top 8 player in the NBA, like
that's realistically movable too, which is fun.
Yeah. So like you just get a top 8 player. This team looks like a scary championship at least a Western Conference contender.
James
in
Harden,
the West. That's how
free agent this year.
That's it. Listen, don't open. Yeah,
just
no.
saying.
Listen, this is a team that has a bunch of really good role players, a sizable draft capital, and cap space. Like this is a really, really good team, and they have Danny Ainge. when you have Dan, and they have a great coach. I mean, Will Hardy does not get talked about. The sets he run, the unlockment of his players, the confidence he puts in his players. I mean, he is a young and upcoming great coach. And I think the situation Utah's in is they can either go to rebuild route or they can go to competitive route. But it doesn't matter because they'll be great in either one. And I think that's the perfect spot that they're in. So for Utah, you just got to look at it and be like, this is a great place. I mean, we're in a great position. The fans are incredible. We got young players, we got old players, we got a good group of vets. We have Cap, we have a coach, we have a GM that's comfortable and confident in us. And I think that's the beauty of it. And I just want to give Utah that credit because they completely aced the Donovan Mitchell trade. One, because they sent him to a place, that's helping him thrive, and that they also got good capital back. And then they aced the Rudy Gobert trade. I mean, they completely balled in that trade. And then they aced the Laurie pickup. I mean, Colin Sexton has been as great as you want him to be, but he's on a friendly that can be traded. But they pretty much aced the coaching too. So they've been an A+ off season all year, and I think the way they've been playing has been so competitive. You got to give them credit, man. So I just want to give them 100% percentage because they've been amazing basically in the rebuild process. They've been amazing.
100% chance they've shocked us. That's what I would say.
Yeah.
James Harden, I want to just you did it, and I'm going to have this conversation. I don't care what time it is. So James Harden, I think, is legitimate, could go anywhere at this point because I don't know what the Philly thing is going to come to an end. I get that they're 32-16 in the East. The reason I say this is because you brought it up, like you mentioned, you're trying to think of like top 8. You mentioned 8, right? Let's just say top 15 to be safe. James Harden is, I think, a realistic expectation. Jimmy Butler, I think, is also really realistic. I think he fits the mold there in Utah. I think Will Hardy would be an unbelievable coach for him and the way he plays. And then I think after that, it starts to be your OG Anunobys of the world. I think those are kind of the 3 that I don't like to project trades and offseeing. Yeah, Jalen. Well, I don't know. I mean, God, they would have to give up everything.
No, he's a free agent next year.
I know, but
yeah,
I'm 36-15, best team in the East 2 years in a row. Even with the coach debacle, it's going to take. I mean, granted, it took a coach. Whatever. I'm not going to go down the Ime Udoka route, but it took that happening for people to freak out, and then it doesn't matter. Like, so if that didn't tear them apart, I mean, I don't know what will. That would be really. If I give you a percentage chance on Jaylen Brown, it'd probably be 5, just because I think at this point it would have to something bad would have to happen. But no, I think there's a lot of realistic options for Utah, and it's just really interesting to see where they are. It does remind me, and I hate to be lazy here, but it does remind me of where Boston was right before they got Kevin Garnett because they had Ray Allen and Paul Pierce. Whether they have Lowry and then what's the second guy there, let's figure that out. But maybe it's the guy in the draft, right? That's my point. So it's understanding that he's done this before. I had a guy on that is a resident, comes on the show all the time here, good friend of mine, Grayson Hill, and we talked about, we did a GM draft, basically, a starting lineup of the best GM since 2000, and, like, Danny Ainge was the second pick. Like, it is what it is. Like, he has been one of the best GMs of all time, and I don't care what his misses are. I think Pat Riley, was pretty easy just because the Heat got 3 titles in there. It was kind of like okay.
Bob Myers, did he go 3?
Myers, I think he was 3 or 4. Yeah, there was just a lot of, but that's a really interesting segment. I bring it up a lot because I really do think if people who are basketball, not nerds necessarily, but people who really enjoy that type of conversation, it was really interesting to realize that there was like 18 legitimate picks and there's only 10 spots. And we were making it, and then we were like, okay, but where does Sam Presti come in all this? Because he didn't win a title, but like, he put together 2 different really good teams and changed how the league is built in a matter of 15 years. So like you had to take consideration of all that stuff. The point was Danny Ainge. I think we're in a really, really good crossroads in Utah where they can basically go any direction they'd like, and it's because of the fleecing they did with Donovan Mitchell's trade and Rudy Gobert trade. I've been on record saying that was one of the worst trades in NBA history. The Gobert trade was. So at the end of the day, for Minnesota specifically, but I think they're in a really, really awesome place, and I think this is a good conversation to bookmark and be like, wow, they signed that guy in the offseason? That's insane. Like, wow, they're actually – and the next thing you know, they're a top 6 seed next year. So faster rebuild than I think most people got, and that takes into consideration nothing with their draft picks, which I think is going to be really, really important. So, all right, anything – we talked about the ACC a lot. We talked about the NBA just over an hour here. I had a great time. Anything else basketball that you want to get out there? And then please plug away so that you can – so we can get out of here. I have something for you if not. I forgot already. I did it last week and I forgot again. Finals pick and NCAA tournament pick. I ask every guest that, and I don't want to forget. So let's just knock that out.
You know my finals pick. Golden State. Never doubt in my mind. NCAA tournament pick. NCAA is weird. You want me to just pick the champion, or you want me to go
Give me the
Final
finals,
Four?
and you obviously are going to pick Golden State. So give me the finals because the East has a lot of good contenders, and then you can just give me
Okay.
like who you think is going to win the title right this moment.
All right. East. I got the East. Boston coming out. Golden State coming out, and then
Okay.
Golden State winning. NCAA tournament. I would say I don't know how the brackets is working right now, but I think Houston, and then I'm gonna probably go Baylor,
I like it.
and then uh, yeah, I'm
Houston
gonna
for
stick with
sure.
those two.
I'm with you
Yeah,
on
no,
Houston 100.
Houston.
Percent They're
Houston's been the
going to be
best
good.
team. Yeah, those are my two, and I got Houston winning this year.
Okay, so do I, and I always ask every guest. I've got the same thing right now. I've got, well, no, I'm sorry. I have Denver, Boston, and then I have Houston. So mine hasn't changed in a few weeks. I don't see it changing anyway. All right, plug away. Anything where people can find you, it'll also be on the screen and in the description below, as well as when this episode goes out, it'll be all listed in there as well.
You can follow me on Twitter at DuragRiv. You can follow me on TikTok, Riv Academy. My YouTube channel is called Riv Academy. Shout out to Pick a Side. You can also go follow us there on YouTube. Pick a Side podcast on YouTube, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram. And yeah, no, shout out to the 2 Point Podcast, man. I love to do things like this. Is my first college podcast, so I think that's really cool. And I will definitely be back. Definitely.
That was what I was about to say. You're always welcome here. Definitely check out Riv Academy, like you said. Pick a side. Been killing the podcast game.
Before we go,
What's up?
I'm going to tell you this on your own show. I am doing a big board,
Nice.
a little draft big board. I'm having Ryan Hammer on. I'm having Steven Gillespie on,
Nice.
and you're going to be the fourth guy on. So we're going to
Awesome.
do a nice little big board. I'll let you know what the dates is, blah, 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 blah. But
Sweet.
we will be having a big board. Probably do the first round. No, we'll do the second to have fun. Yeah, we'll do first 2 rounds just to see how we go. So
Awesome.
I had
Looking
to
forward
let you
to
know
it.
that.
I appreciate it. Looking forward to it. I always like to tell people, like, plugs don't just have to be socials. They can be content coming up too. Like, hey,
Yeah.
whether it's me involved or not, it doesn't matter. Like, you can, like, if you guys wanted to be like, this is what we're talking about on Monday, like, man, I tell people all the time, like, get out what you want to get out. People are going to hear this in 2 days. So, well, thank you. I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to it. We're about to get out of here. I'll go and do my outro. Obviously, like you said, all of the description stuff will be below for you. All of your links, socials, all that stuff will be there. 2 Pointers. Don't forget to check out W Energy. Link in the description below for 10% off your order. WEnergy.com. Thank you again. You're always welcome here. I appreciate your time. This has been the 2 Pointers Podcast. I'm Trevor Everett. On behalf of Riv, we'll see you later.